as they log on. A very warm welcome to you all to this, our final end-of-year strategic China briefing with Brett Stevens, Victoria's Trade Commissioner to China. This will also be the final Victorian event for 2021, and we'll all have a well-deserved rest. I'm Virginia Birrell, the National Executive Officer of the Australia-China Business Council and the CEO of the Victorian branch. I'll begin today's event by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we meet today from all localities around Australia and pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging. Brett, I think this is the fourth session we've done with you since you took up your post at the beginning of the year, and hasn't time just flown? You came into this role in a pivotal time for the relationship, and I know how valuable your leadership's been, not only to those online today, but to all businesses and individuals engaged with China. So well done at the end of your first year. We appreciate you speaking today to share in-market updates from China and on-the-ground insights on emerging opportunities. I know there have been a number of activities of note lately that you'll cover, including international students coming back to Australia and the launch of Victoria House. You and your team, together with the Victorian Trade and Investment offices around China and Global Victoria office here in Melbourne, have been strong partners with ACBC, and we greatly appreciate your collegiality and support. It's been built through years of cooperation and our mutual goal of building opportunities with China for Victorians. We've strengthened our partnership with you through the highly successful Global Victoria Trade Alliance program, focusing on export, and we look forward to continuing next year with that session. And I'd like to particularly thank Nick Henderson, the Deputy Commissioner based in Chengdu, for sharing valuable and timely information at each of these sessions, and that will continue through next year. I'd like to thank our guests today who've sent in pre-submitted questions. We've had some interesting ones come through, which I'll ask Brett during our Q&A session. And if any questions come to mind while you're listening to Brett speaking, as always, please feel free to submit these via the Q&A box or publicly in the chat box. I'll now hand over to Brett for his end-of-year update. Thanks, Brett.
Excellent. Good afternoon, everyone, and special thank you to you, Virginia, for inviting me to speak again today. It's always a pleasure. Now, as you mentioned, this is my fourth update with the ACB members since I began as Commissioner in July 2020. And as I mentioned in previous updates, I only understood your time in pre-pandemic. However, changes provide opportunities for creativity, and I'm excited to share with you some of the achievements that we've delivered this year. Now, as I'm sure most of you know, that the Victorian government has a strong connection with China, and we remain committed to maintaining and growing this relationship. With the largest presence of any state government, with 5 trade and investment offices located in Shanghai, Beijing, Nanjing, Chengdu and Hong Kong. And across this network, we have dedicated specialist teams for trade, investment and education. Now, in April's session, I mentioned that our team has grown with the addition of Nick, who has the role of Deputy Commissioner based in Chengdu. And since then, we've actually expanded our team with 6 more new members. So joining us are Derek Lee, who's our Investment Director based in Hong Kong. We have Jennifer Guan, Strategic Advisor based here in Shanghai. And we have Davis Zhu, who's our Agriculture Export Manager. Now, Davis is taking up a new in-market specialist role that we've created to assist our Victorian companies in navigating and keeping abreast of China's agricultural import regulations. And of course, we have Lois Liu, Eric Gu and Wendy Mao focused on managing our operations at the Study Melbourne hub in Shanghai. Now, this new and expanded team is building not only on the commercial partnerships, but also government, cultural and people-to-people links, including our 2 sister state relationships with Jiangsu and Sichuan. In fact, this year, we're actually celebrating Victoria and Sichuan's 5th year anniversary as sister states. Now, today, I'm going to give you a bit of an update on 3 things. CIIE, the China International Import Expo, our new facility, Vic House, and of course, international students. Now, with regards to CIIE, this year, Global Vic participated at the China International Import Expo for the 4th time in early November. Now, CIIE is it's a 6-day multi-sector trade show for imported products co-hosted by China's Ministry of Commerce and the Shanghai Municipal Government, with support from overseas governments and chambers of commerce. And at this year's CIIE, Global Vic secured a 300 square metre exhibition space in the Food and Agriculture Hall. Now, we had 30 Victorian and agricultural companies join the pavilion in an open market style where all of the visitors could come up to each of our stalls and learn about and engage with the actual exhibitors. This year, the exhibitors were people who were already on the ground. So all the companies that participated actually had representation either through their own employees or directly through their partners of import and distribution. Now, within the actual pavilion, we had an open kitchen where our team members hosted multiple cooking and product demonstration sessions in partnership with all the company representatives. From ice cream and probiotic snacks to lamb and abalone, we showcased a wide range of Victorian products for our on-site visitors to taste and experience. And it was great to see really strong interest in the products being showcased from the potential buyers. Now, a lot of people continue to ask me on what the general feeling is towards Victorian products here in China. And obviously this question is being driven in direct response to the continuing bilateral issues. But pleasingly, I can say that we've not only seen that we haven't seen any anti-Australian sentiment at all. The only sense of angst that we're getting has simply been of one of frustration that some of the consumers have not been able to access some of their favorite products, such as, obviously such as wine, as it's not on the shelf at their local stores. Now, continuing on with the CIIE wrap up though, we were really delighted to receive a visit from the Vice Mayor of Shanghai, Madame Zhang. And she was accompanied by a delegation from the Shanghai Foreign Affairs Office. And this is particularly important because government to government public acknowledgement is not something which is actually happening that much at the moment. So it was quite a big symbolic gesture and symbolic outcome to actually have the Vice Mayor come and visit us. Now, we've also broadened our engagement beyond our physical pavilion through 2 live streaming sessions that we conducted. Now, one of our sessions featured a KOL, a key opinion leader, who walked around the pavilion and interviewed all 30 of our Victorian companies. While another session delivered our on-site, which was delivered on-site, featured 20 plus Victorian companies who basically spoke in depth about their companies and their products. Now, these live stream sessions were pretty successful, and we received a combined viewership of over 17.5 million people. Now, this is a relatively modest number for China, but it's pretty good when from our perspective when you're thinking about how many people that really is. Now, I want to move on to our Vic House. Now, it's worth mentioning here though that trade shows are not the only way that we're supporting Victorian businesses in engaging with Chinese stakeholders and clients. Maintaining our trade relationship with China is vital, as it is Victoria's largest trading partner and our largest food and fibre export market, worth about $4.7 billion in 2009-2020. And we have been continuously adapting to the changes and the difficulties brought about due to the pandemic. And we're trying to be a little bit innovative in how we set paths for new sales and direct engagement channels for Victorian exporters and producers in the China marketplace. Now, I'm really excited to introduce a new facility we officially launched on October the 18th, which was realised through Agriculture Victoria's Pathway to Export program. Now, everyone, you're going to just give me 1 sec while I try and share my screen here, okay? So hopefully this is going to work. And how do I make that big? And I'm going to be looking at Virginia and making sure that everyone can actually see what I'm talking there. All right, so just hang on. I'm still trying to juggle some stuff here. All right, so Virginia, you can still see my my PowerPoint presentation? Yep, great.
Yeah,
All right, so
fine, Brett, go ahead.
fantastic. All right, so look, dubbed Vic House. This is a dedicated, permanent, 900 square metre, 3-storey building, which is centrally located along the Bund in Shanghai. And it's an integrated trade promotion facility that will primarily be used for B2B meetings with importers, distributors, and retailers. Now, the first floor of our building here, you really got to cut me some slack here because I'm trying to juggle the IT here. So hopefully you can see that. So the first floor of the facility includes multiple meeting rooms, which are equipped with state-of-the-art AV equipment that can be basically used for video conferencing, for business matching and introduction meetings. We're essentially trying to replicate the type of services and support that we would normally be able to provide to a Victorian company if they were coming to a trade show. And because people are having difficulties in traveling from Victoria to China, or our buyers from China back to Victoria, we're trying to find ways of either virtually engaging or being able to still have conversations and still be relevant for the products that we're bringing into the marketplace. Now, when I move on to our second floor, this is where we actually have a permanent product display shelves for promotional purposes. And this includes spaces for ambient, refrigerated, and frozen products. You'll see here that essentially we've got pillars. It's with company logos on the top and the products on the shelving. Essentially, what we're trying to do is, again, replicate the type of support and the type of services that we'd be able to provide if a company was coming to a trade show with us. And now, as I move through to our third floor, you can see here that we've essentially set up an open demonstration kitchen. And this space is equipped with displays for video and demonstration broadcasting. It's got a dedicated wine and spirit tasting stations. And it's as well as being a multi-purpose event site, which is suited to host around about 50 people at a time. Essentially, what we're trying to do here is to create an environment where people can either come and participate in demonstration areas, or ideally, because we really recognize the value associated with being able to talk to the producer or the manufacturer or the farmer, or even in some instances, celebrity chefs. Now, because of the restrictions in travel, what we can do here is we can actually get our celebrity chef on screen in Melbourne. We can film them while they're actually cooking something. Maybe it's a steak, a beef steak. Okay, we're talking about our fantastic grass-fed red meat, and we get them up on stage. They can then be seen on these two TV stations just here. Everyone's being connected up by a really quite clever video conferencing system, and we can have a cook who's mimicking what the celebrity chef is actually preparing and talking to and engaging with. And the beauty of that is that our audience still get to experience the engagement with the person, but they also get a chance to taste the product as well, which is something which is always really hard for us to do. We can take people to a restaurant, no problems, they get the product, or we can take them into a kitchen, but then they don't get the engagement with the people. So we think this is a really innovative way of remaining connected with our audience. Now I'm going to try and stop the sharing my screen. Hang on, Virginia. How do I go back to that? Sorry.
We're right,
I'm going to try and.
We've been able to do it from this end, Brett. So all's good. We're back.
Oh, have you?
Yeah, we're back to seeing you now. Amazing.
Okay, righto. Perfect. Sorry, thank you. All right, so no problem. So look, Vic House is basically, it's trying to provide increased flexibility for all of our Victorian companies and producers in establishing a virtual and a physical presence outside of the fixed dates of trade shows. So we're further de-risking our food and fibre export sector. Now, since its launch, Vic House has hosted successful industry events, including visits for alternative protein products, wine tasting with key clients, as well as our Jiangsu Victoria friendship dinners connecting commercial and government representatives between the two sister states. Now, a number of other industry events are planned for the coming summer season, which will include a Dairy Australia China Scholarship Program alumni event, as well as a whole heap of promotional activities that will officially kick off the Victorian cherry season, our summer fruit season, and we're going to showcase a whole range of other Victorian produce. Now, we've also got quite a clever WeChat mini program that makes it easy for all the Victorian businesses and their Chinese partners to look at utilising this facility and booking the venue for any of your events and support from our team. And if you do want to learn a little bit more, please reach out to my office, have a chat with our Senior Trade Manager, Jessie Gong, and she'll help connect you with not just our team, but also with the space. Now, international students. Clearly, you've heard some announcements from the Australian federal government on opening our borders to international students, and we had our first arrivals yesterday. Now, as many of you know, one of the most affected sectors by the pandemic has been the international education sector. In 2019, international education was Victoria's largest service export, worth over $13 billion, supporting almost 80,000 jobs. Now, of the 250,000 international students studying in Victoria prior to COVID, 88,000 were from China. Now, many of these students were not able to return to Victoria to recommence their studies and are completing their classes online. Now, as you've heard in my previous update, the VicGov responded to this by essentially establishing a series of study hubs around the world. And with the first one opening earlier this year in March in Shanghai, it's a part of a long-term international education recovery plan that we have. Now, the Victorian government is supporting international students to return to Victoria, such as visa applications for new students and providing virtual pre-departure information sessions, as well as by working closely with the federal government to ensure a smooth return process that is in accordance with the latest regulations. It's really important because these regulations are pretty fluid and dynamic at the moment, and just being able to have the conversations and provide that support is really appreciated by our students. Now, on the ground in China, our Education and Study Hub team are working hard on developing programs to provide pre-departure support to Chinese students who are considering or will be returning to Victoria. We're also working closely with Victorian education providers to facilitate arrival support for our returning students. However, Study Hub will also continue to support students who are studying online in China, as well as helping prospective students learn more about their opportunities in Victoria. And later on, when travel is more accessible, the Study Hub can potentially also transform into a connecting point for Victorian student and providers on their visits to China. Essentially, we're all doing everything we can to support the students, the providers, and the international education sector from as many angles as possible. Now, as always, I've spoken extensively. I'm going to stop there because I'd rather open it up. Stop there because I'd rather. So, Virginia, let's see what happens.
Right.
And have
Thanks, Brett. I'm having a little bit of delays. I hope my internet's all right. It's a little bit unstable, so I hope you're hearing me okay. But thank you so much for that terrific update. Obviously, you seem highly energized at the end of this very busy year, and obviously all these initiatives are just so good, so appropriate. We did have one quick question: that is the Victoria House free for Australian businesses who are wanting to exhibit there? Is that a free facility?
It is a free facility, but I'm going to put a little caveat on there is that you do have to be Victorian.
Yep, oh, obviously. Terrific. Thank you for that. So we appreciate that optimistic outlook that you've given us. It really does reflect the comments that Graham Fletcher made only just recently in his visit to Melbourne. He really left us with that sort of cautious optimism that we're on the right track. And we note your objectives, and obviously those, the Hub, CIIE and Vic House are all amazing areas of collaboration and areas where we can take advantage of the opportunities up in China. So that's great to hear about those. I'll move now on to the Q&A session, and there are some questions coming through, so I do encourage people to keep sending those in. But I'll move to the pre-submitted questions now because we've obviously let Brett know about these, so he can answer them in a little more detail. Birrell. Strawn from Swinburne University asks you, how do you see the political tensions between the US and China affecting individual Australian businesses?
Now, Strawn, it's a difficult question to answer properly because it genuinely depends on the industry sector that you're in and essentially how that fits in with some of the trading arrangements. But the China-US political position is in some instances actually providing opportunities for Victorian companies. And I know a lot of emphasis is put on the table at the moment, a lot of media reporting on the fact that the bilateral situation between Australia and China is giving a free kick as such, or it's coming at a cost because of the US taking advantage of those market channels. I don't necessarily think that those are politically motivated. I think they are absolutely market driven, and Australia will also, if it was happening in reverse, then Australian companies and Australian businesses would be looking to capitalise on this as well. I think there's a really important point to make here, is that when you're looking at the politics between, obviously between the countries and the nations that we're engaging with here, that is one element that's always going to be highly topical, highly reported upon. What you don't necessarily see as much of is that commercial partners and the business-to-business links, they will always continue to talk, and they will always continue to respond and navigate their way through the changing business conditions and the dynamic nature of international trade. So whilst I don't think that I don't think that the US-China is going to necessarily help anyone. It'd be much nicer if we're all on a friendlier page with everyone, but I also don't see it as being an absolute blocker for Victorian companies or Australian businesses coming into the market either.
Well, that's wise advice. Thank you for that. Now, Sherry Sue from Monash University asks you, should we be pessimistic or optimistic about the relationship between Australia and China in 2022?
Sherry, I think I'm a famously glass half full person. So I try and remain pretty positive and optimistic around everything that's going on at the moment, because, well, what else are you going to do? I mean, you can't actually influence and change the position. I think it's in a much better space to be looking at finding an opportunity rather than dwelling on all the negative stuff. Am I optimistic that we're going to see this amazing about face and resumption of engagement on the 1st of January? No, not at all. I think that unfortunately we're in for a little bit of a long haul as we look to resume engagement. And my real concern that probably stands out for me is simply that we've got a federal election coming up, and as we saw with the US election, with Biden and Trump, there was a lot of rhetoric that was very clearly targeting a domestic voter audience within the US and using international bogeymen as the way of communicating with their domestic voters. I suspect that we may see a similar position here there in Australia, where there might be some comments and some rhetoric being thrown about by people campaigning that will definitely cause some headaches going forward as we come into that federal election. So ultimately, it might be a resetting point post-election, but we'll need to just keep an eye on that. But no, look, I don't want to be overly optimistic. I think we're definitely in for a longer period of time where it's going to be harder. We're still, even when we're looking at potential return or resumption of sort of international travel, until people can start re-engaging again at a face-to-face level, it's going to be even harder for us to regain any of that those relationships or regain any of that sort of engagement. So I think that because travel is probably not going to be on the cards for at least maybe the end of next year, halfway through the year at the earliest, then we'll just have to wait and see. But I'm optimistic, but realistic.
I think you probably, Brett, would be aware of the high-level dialogue that the ACBC organised with the Business Council of Australia and Chinese counterparts on Monday, and that was just a small opening of dialogue, which is really, really hopeful and positive around the areas of climate change. And we had companies like BHP, Woodside, Rio, ANZ, Fortescue, and their Chinese counterparts really in a good open dialogue, saying we really do want to work together. So we're optimistic too that we can find those areas of mutual collaboration that we can then progress, and I'm sure you are feeling that as well on the ground.
No, absolutely, Virginia, and I've never felt ever that there's an anti-Australia movement at the people-to-people engagement or the consumer level, and the ACBC session on Monday is a really good example that there were some very, very senior key businesses and individuals within those businesses that were prepared to go public about their conversation. And that's something which I think needs to be highly regarded in terms of what that actually achieved, because a lot of these businesses they're always continuing their private dialogues anyway, but that's something that happens, sort of down below the radar. So I think it's really comforting to see that the businesses were prepared to set up and actually say, look, we are talking, we're continuing to talk, and we value the relationships that both sides bring to the table.
Oh, that's true. Now, Ben Dingle from NewsChev, he has a question. Is Victoria better placed than Australia Inc? I guess it's in relation to the trade relationship. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think that Victoria has a different relationship with China. There's no sort of getting around that, and that was obviously best demonstrated by the Victoria, with the BRI and the MOU. Now, obviously, that's been cancelled, and we absolutely respect the position that the federal government has taken, and we're abiding by all of the changed regulations and policies that have been put in place. But Victoria remains committed to our engagement with China, where I think we're demonstrating that through the continued engagement that we're having. I think that we're demonstrating that through the dialogue that we're continuing to have with our partners and with our, both at a government level as well as the business level here within China. So by no means is Victoria insulated or immune to any of the bilateral issues or the commercial arrangements and the restrictions in some of the market access sectors. Sorry, the market access that we've seen imposed on different sectors as well. But I think we're not necessarily looked upon favourably, but we're absolutely still able to have conversations, and that's something that we really value. And I do everything that I can to ensure that our office, we're non-diplomatic. We are not involved in any of the diplomatic relations that happen between China and Australia. We're a commercial trade promotion agency, and we're a foreign direct investment promotion agency. and that's the space that we play in. So yeah, we don't sort of the role of the federal government.
And that really answers a question that Mona posed, Dr. Mona Chung from our executive committee, and she's saying that Australian politicians are running close with the US in their policies, and she's sort of saying, you know, that has a direct impact on Australian business, and she's hearing that direct from China, and she was really wondering what the Victorian government is doing as far as policies go to sort of, I guess, differentiate themselves and focus more on trade.
Yeah, and that's very much it. You know, we've always played in that trade and investment space, and essentially, you know, what keeps us most occupied is simply engaging and looking to support businesses either through new business development or working through some of the issues that might be happening on some of the market access changes, especially things like, you know, the new decree 248, 249. Where, you know, we're and also, you know, those are going to be big issues, and they're a big topic that probably too big to talk about today at this session. But you know, other simple things about just helping businesses by providing that on-ground information and support. That's probably where Victoria's got a little bit of an advantage and a differentiation, is that we've got a large footprint here. We've got our 5 offices. Sorry, we've got 5 locations where we have offices. In Shanghai alone, we've got, you know, three spaces with what we're doing in terms of delivery of support. So yeah, Victoria's a little bit different in that perspective because we're just more engaging.
Owen Zhang from Morrison Oriental has a question. It's got 2 parts to it. One is the impact of the Evergrande issues and the refocus of growth. And the second part is there any impact on consumer confidence and demand for high quality products, particularly in the health and food areas? So we've got the Evergrande, and then we've got the health and food product questions.
Okay. All right, so the Evergrande question is actually, again, I'm going to be quite straightforward. It's incredibly difficult for me to give an insightful answer on this because it's incredibly opaque, the actual position that Evergrande's in. You know, there was a payment due last week. I think it was 350 million, no, more than that, $350 billion that needed to be put on the table. I think some of it's been paid, but it's incredibly hard for us to really see where that money goes, who gets it, how it's being split up, who's actually paying for it. You know, is it a bit of Peter paying Paul, or is it genuinely, you know, margin calls coming in from the outside? We're not seeing any wholesale changes, for instance, on real estate market value in places like Shanghai. We haven't seen any, you know, big sort of fire sales going on. But it's definitely a topic of conversation that is much more prevalent than what it was 12 months ago. So I think that we monitor the whole situation with Evergrande pretty closely, because it's not just a real estate play. It's what level of support is going to be provided at a national level for an entity like this, and do we think this is going to be played out across other industry sectors as well? I think the connection here with the common prosperity goal as well, and with the announcements from the president, can't be ignored. I think there is definitely going to be there's potential there for some individuals that will be having to be giving back a lot of personal wealth associated with this position. But yeah, it's an opaque industry sector that's really hard for us to sort of make a call on it. In fact, Virginia, it actually might be a topic that we might want to unpack a little bit further during another session. Now, the second part of that question was around consumer goods and health and lifestyle products. Is that right, Virginia?
Yeah, sure. Yes. Yes.
Yeah. So Okay, so look, the single biggest impact we're seeing at the moment has simply been about product availability. Nothing's changed. In fact, because of the pandemic, we've actually seen an increase demand for health and well-being products. Consumers are particularly conscious of products that offer health and well-being benefits. They're particularly conscious of the nutritional value and the provenance of the food that they're eating as well. So we actually absolutely recognise this as being a growing, not just a growing sector, but a sector which is actually becoming a lot more sophisticated than what it was in the past. Nutrition and health and well-being, these are, it's the fundamentals of TCM. Everyone is particularly focused on health and well-being products and how to look after themselves. But the pandemic has really escalated that growth and that knowledge and that sophistication of the consumers' understanding of what individual products do and where they want to get their product from. And absolutely, Australia, clearly Victoria, we're really well placed to service that. And we've been in this really awkward position where for a long time we've seen huge growth in this particular sector, but it's been very much predicated on the CBEC market access channel, which has been clearly hugely impacted by the reduction in international air travel and hence the Daigou shopping facilities. So we've sort of been trying to work through how do we continue to access and support and provide assistance to companies to maintain that growth, recognizing that we're trying to find absolutely new channels and new ways of still remaining relevant. So yeah, definitely huge demand for it, and it's there. And if I could have people bringing product, or I could get market access into here, we'd see massive growth.
Mm. And we're getting that same feedback that there's this fastidiousness of the Chinese consumer to really investigate and know their products. And I had a particular example that might have even come from Ben Dingle at Newchev, just talking about infant formula and how the mothers are so fastidious about knowing the components of the formula, and they often really know more about it than a lot of other people. So you're right about that. There is that research going on. So we are well placed with our clean green products to succeed in the market through that. I've got a question now from Peter Hansford. He's from Delwip. He's actually heading up or a member of our Energy and Resources Working Group, but his question actually is broader than that. He's asking who the winners and losers are from the current Australia trade dispute.
Well, Peter, you're right across this. So, who's winning at the moment? I think if you're an iron ore exporter, I think you're doing pretty well. I don't think we can. The actual total trade at the moment is definitely in Australia's favour, but it's very much focused on particular industry sectors that are very much out of digging things out of the ground. I think the real losers here are the businesses and the consumers. The consumers, obviously, because they're looking for product and some of the product just isn't here. There's product being held up, or it's on the docks, or there's been issues around market access. And we've spoken about that before with some of the licensing and certification being temporarily unavailable. The real losers also are the exporters. These are businesses that have invested not just money, but just huge amounts of resources and time and genuine relationship building in forming connections with not simply a customer, but actually partners and in many instances, really long-term, well-established partners for their export business. And that's been massively impacted, not just through the the bilateral element that we've already spoken about, but the pandemic. If you can't come and visit people, if you can't engage, if you can't actually come and have that face-to-face conversation, and don't get me wrong, I love virtual engagement and video conferencing, and it's fantastic. It's unbelievably effective, but it's not the same as sitting down across the table from someone and having that connection. So I think it's been the smaller, the SMEs, which have been really impacted by this. It's the new people who are trying to explore coming into the China market, and it's also it's the consumers here who are not necessarily getting a chance to get exposed or get engagement with new products or with some of the Australian Victorian product that's hitting, that should be hitting the shelves or any of the services that we're supporting as well.
So Ben from UCHEV has just commented he thinks the winners are France, New Zealand, and Ireland, and I'm just wondering how you then compete with that. What you can do.
Well, New Zealand's been winning in that space because they've had a different relationship with China for a long time. And when you look at their dairy access, they've got a preferential deal, not just for Australia, but for everyone. And when you look at some of the other countries like France or Germany, well, yeah, they do get preferential treatment, but they've also invested tens and tens of billions of dollars in industry development here. When you look at companies like Bosch or L'Oreal or Michelin, these guys have got huge manufacturing bases here. They're employing hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people. They're getting preferential treatment because they've also invested significant amounts of partnership into the country. So I think that there are definitely individual companies that are taking advantage of this. I mean, we look at some of the market access that we've lost around. Actually, a topic here. We have some issues with some of their horticulture products coming in last year, and what couldn't come in from Australia was then picked up by South America. It was a South American product that the Chilean produce that was coming through, or was a South African product that was coming through. Now, the interesting thing that I see about that is that the buyers weren't going to the alternative suppliers because it was cheaper or because it was better quality or anything like that. They were doing it simply because there was a lot less risk associated with getting product into the country. So we recognise that, and that's why we've got people now like Davis on the ground in our team who are trying to deal with some of these market access issues, and we're investing a lot of time in trying to also not predict, because if I had 12 crystal balls, I'd give you 12 different answers, on where things are going. But we are trying to, be in place where we can provide that real information back into the industry. But there's no real win.
Lost connection.
Virginia, are you still there?
Yep, sorry, we just froze. We're having a few little connection issues here, so hope you can hear me okay. I've just got another question. Yep. Thanks for that terrific background information, and I think too, hopefully our Global Alliance Export Program with you next year will address some of the issues that you were mentioning. Just moving on to international students, just a quick question without notice. What is the sentiment like up there with the international students studying in Victorian universities in China, and do you think they will come back to Victoria in the new year?
Okay, so the first topic there is that people are frustrated. People are really, really frustrated. Parents are frustrated. They've invested a lot of money into education. We've now got our second cohort of students who are enrolled but haven't been able to come and study in Victoria yet. So that's frustrating, and it's also been incredibly difficult to manage as well, because we've been on this journey ourselves in terms of it's open, we're closed, we're up, we're down. It's it's really, really, really hard. And it's particularly difficult to explain because China hasn't been on that same open close type relation. It's closed in terms of access into the country, but in terms of domestic travel, in terms of what's happening here on the ground, it's relatively normal. It has been relatively normal. So where we see here is that there's still a strong demand from Chinese international students to come to Victoria. We absolutely saw some students exploring other markets. So they were exploring the UK, they were exploring Canada, they were exploring the US. The interesting thing about it, though, is that even though they were able to travel, they were able to actually to engage, not as many students as what you'd think actually made the commitment, because as frustrating as it is, the daily death tolls that are associated with the pandemic in those particular countries are pretty extraordinary, and not too many parents are all that keen to put their children on a plane and send them off into a space like that. So we still, this is a topic that we're focusing on quite well every single day. So we still see the demand for students coming into Victoria, and interestingly, we're getting a lot of agents and parents coming back to us again to explore next steps. So there's recruiting for the next cohort of students for next year as well. So I'm genuinely optimistic around where we're going in the student space.
Let's hope so. That's good. Just another question without notice, and we may need to take this offline, but Mona was asking, are there grants for Chinese companies from the Victorian government? Chinese companies. I know foreign companies, but do they?
To do what, Mona? A grant for what?
It'll be exporting.
For exporting from Victoria to China, or from China to Victoria?
She hasn't actually said that. She said, how about access to grants for Chinese companies in Victoria? What's available and how to access it?
All right, I'm going to make some massive assumptions, and we'll probably will. And Mona, please, you can reach out directly, and I can have a chat with you in more detail on this one. But essentially, we actually just ran a session last Thursday where we spoke with 150 migrant visa holders in Victoria who all have export businesses sending product from Victoria to China. So, for instance, all of those attendees, they all have Victorian ABNs, and as a result, they're treated as Victorian companies, and we provide them with a whole list of support, everything from free access of Vic House right through to all the other support that we would provide through Global Victoria or any of our other international trade agencies. In terms of support to Chinese businesses, we do provide foreign direct investment attraction support to companies, and that differs depending on the business, the industry, the type of innovation that they're involved with, the level of the type of jobs that they're creating, or perhaps it's a new industry sector that's being established. Perhaps, Virginia, it's best to take this one offline. If you want to pass my details on to Mona, I can explore that a bit more.
We'll do that. But look, thank you very much. it's just been wonderful. We've had some terrific comments in the chat room. Everyone thinks the facility is impressive, and they're thanking you for your time and for your sharing all this information with us. So it's been really wonderful, and we look forward to another update with you next year, or a couple of updates when convenient, because I don't want to put the pressure on. But it's been terrific doing them about every 6 months, and just keep our members and friends really up to date with what's happening on the ground. So with that, we can happily conclude the final ACBC Victoria event for 2021. So what a way to finish. I know some of our most dedicated members on the line today. They've been great supporters, and they've come along to most of our events. So I'd like to thank them for their commitment to the work of ACBC and their support of Global Victoria and the Australia-China trade relationship, because there are a lot of people working very, very hard, and there's certainly some of them. We've already got plenty of events in store for next year, including our blockbuster Lunar New Year cocktail event function with the National Basketball League, and I see that Jeremy Lolliger is one of our guests on the line today heading up that, and it should be a great night, Omicron permitting, and always our popular International Women's Day high tea. So it'll be in March, and booking for those will be sent out to you with the notes from today's event. We've also almost finished locking in our sector-defining agribusiness summit, with a focus on tackling climate change together with China. That'll be in April, so keep an eye on your inbox for all of those events, and that'll come to you over the holidays. So in closing, Brett, thanks again to you and your team up there. You're doing a fantastic job. Please pass that on to everyone for us, and Nick, obviously, in Chengdu, and everyone else. I wish you a very happy festive season. I hope you can take some well-deserved time off. I hope everyone on the line can have a break and recharge, and we look forward to hopefully seeing you in person next year. So thanks again. Thanks, Brett.
Thank you, Virginia. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.